A quick thank you to the T5 peeps. Bob the Dragon, Data Magnet, Cat Crab Lobster, Duck Machine, Try Again 95, Astray the Dreamer, Mezic, Budic Joel, German Chemist, Casper Arnholtz, and Chaos to Mist. Thank you very much. Anyways, onto the story. Class 10 Species Offender, Part 3. To say that the lead supervisor was bewildered would have been an understatement. No siren had sounded to alert them to the arrival of the Terran diplomatic envoy. A short being that was rather more finely dressed than the lead supervisor might have expected, and carrying a terminal unit that looked to be rather advanced in its functionality. I am to address the lead supervisor of this rehabilitation segment, the Terran had said, loudly enough that it was easily heard through the first section of the segment. Guardians and offenders took notice. The Terran had not shouted. The lead supervisor was reasonably assured of that. But the Terran had made their voice carry in such a tone and timbre that it filled the breadth of space for the first section. The lead supervisor had presented themselves bearing the records regarding the Terran offender called Wilfred von Venegut. This could be a straightforward matter, but at least according to conventional wisdom, the lead supervisor was surprised that the envoy was here and not making contact with Union leadership. After all, did the Terrans not respect the Union law? Union leadership had laws on how and when an offender could be released prior to rehabilitation. The presence of this envoy here seemed to suggest that the Terrans didn't respect that. The lead supervisor centered themselves to a neutral state, reminding them that this was not a confrontation yet, despite the semi-surprise arrival of the envoy. Are you the lead supervisor of this rehabilitation segment? The Terran envoy asked flatly. I am. Are you Terran Collective Diplomatic Envoy? The lead supervisor asked. I am. I am also chartered by Union governance as a legal representative of all Terrans in Union space, including all of those whom have been charged and found guilty of crimes against the Union, the envoy said and made a gesture with the terminal unit. A very official-looking charter with an associated leadership stamps, which were nigh impossible to forge as far as the lead supervisor knew, popped into existence on the terminal unit that the lead supervisor was carrying. As was appropriate, the lead supervisor took the time to fully read the charter. It granted the Terran standing in front of them a significant legal status as a non-citizen, but as a member of a concerned Class 10 species in order to address interstellar societal limitations. It seemed to be a word salad with bits of meaning sprinkled throughout, but the lead supervisor could find no fault in it. The lead supervisor returned their gaze to the envoy, who apparently took this as an opportunity to continue. You are presently holding one Wilfred von Venegut, drifter of the Terran Collective. Your records indicate that he was subjected to Customs and Hygienic Search Class 4. This was a violation of the terms of non-citizen rights in Union space, Chapter 23, Transitive Being, subsection 385, paragraph 15. The being in the aforementioned statement was not permitted the appropriate notices as required by Union Space Environmental Health Board Regulations, sections 795 and 273. This resulted in the release of personal articles which fall under Class 2A of the Secured Chemical Registry of Union Space Regulations through no deliberate actions of the being in question. To this effect, the charge of involuntary murder is hereby nullified for failure to demonstrate motive and intent, as prescribed in Section 84 of the Union Criminal Code, subsection 23 through 122. The envoy began half-reading, half-presenting. The lead supervisor was practically shocked into silence and stillness as each of the codes and the standards that the envoy spoke up were brought up on the terminal that they were holding in all the glory. Furthermore, the charge of destruction of property is negated by the circumstances as described in Union Criminal Code Section 431, subsection 91. As to the charge of possession of chemical weaponry, I authorize the stated charge, but revoke the provided trial process conducted to establish guilt and malice, utilizing the Union-Alahari Alliance Treaty, subsections 15, paragraph 7, which details the chemical utilization by the Alahari Alliance species, which fall under the Union Secured Chemical Registry. The envoy continued, sounding almost bored. but such details were missed by stunned lead supervisor. If the lead supervisor was following the Envoy at all, it sounded like the Envoy was effectively invalidating the whole legal proceeding against on what were effectively loopholes. The lead supervisor felt that they should have been displeased by this, but deep inside, they were pleased that whatever this was, the offender wouldn't be their problem anymore by the way this was going. The lead supervisor tried to continue wrapping their head around it all. It sounded like the Envoy was claiming that the offender needed the chemical weaponry it had been carrying as a matter of a required ingestion substance. It wasn't unheard of, but the lead supervisor would be the first to admit that they'd never heard of such requirements this deep in Union space. And what was this Union-Lbry Alliance treaty? The lead supervisor signaled for a moment of review, and the Envoy appeared to be waiting for the lead supervisor's attention before continuing. Due to the rapid-fire receipt of the lead supervisor's terminal pad, the treaty had actually been transmitted in full to the terminal pad and managed to almost fill a good chunk of the terminal pad's active memory, along with other references that had been made. The lead supervisor didn't know such a thing had existed before today, but given the date of the treaty, it was almost 400 solar cycles old, so it was practically ancient history. But if it was still in the books, then it was still reasonable to apply against Union laws, and interspecies interactions were complex to say the least. The lead supervisor could feel their life fluid pulsing around their form as they tried to come to full terms with exactly what the Envoy was saying, and opted to simply make the Envoy say it aloud. "I acknowledge your review. What status is given to the offender?" the lead supervisor asked. "The Terran, known as Wilfred von Vonnegut, is to hereby be released into my custody, and to have all records related to their offending status purged in accordance with innocence regulations per Union Criminal Code Section 1, subsection 12. Pending a review of the case with the aforementioned being, remuneration for unlawful search, unlawful detainment, and related actions may be filed by myself on behalf of the aforementioned being. Per Union statute, this remuneration would be due from all beings or individuals which directly interacted with the aforementioned as part of the legal process as a result of the failure to correct or halt the legal process until such a time as an appropriate species legal authorities could be provided for." The Envoy veritably monologued, still half reading, half presenting. To say that the Envoy had an attention of every being in the first segment, could hear and possibly see the Envoy, would have been something of an understatement. Some of the supervisors appeared to be rapidly attempting to review Union Criminal Code for the indicated sections. Others were simply standing stunned in silence, which was remarkable for some of the Guardians. Offenders appeared to be attempting to understand what the Envoy was saying with varying degrees of success. Some even appeared to be recording the various annotations of Union law, perhaps in the hope that the annotations might be useful to themselves. "If the Envoy will accompany me, I will take you to the relevant offender's chamber," the lead supervisor tried, already becoming tired of this Envoy and wanting the strange Terran to get as far away from them as possible. "I will follow, but hereinafter no remarks are to be made referring to the Terran Wilfred von Vonnegut as an offender. Further remarks to the effect will be logged and included as evidence of contempt against the aforementioned being," the Envoy said blankly, and stepped silently along behind the lead supervisor. There was something of a primal desire to flee that filled the lead supervisor as they moved towards the impromptu Class 10 species offender chamber. They could only guess that it had something to do with the Terran Envoy, but they resisted the urge, choosing instead to calmly move to the best of their ability to the chamber. Using their keycard, they unsealed the chamber, where they noticed that the offender, the Terran Wilfred von Vonnegut, appeared to be sleeping on the processing table. Not wanting to possibly trigger a response from the Terran or the Terran Envoy, the lead supervisor looked to the Envoy, who stepped into the chamber and wrapped their appendage against the processing table. The Terran Wilfred von Vonnegut appeared to awaken as a result of this, but did not react violently, instead raising themselves up and looking between the Envoy and the lead supervisor. "Wilfred von Vonnegut, you are hereby remanded into my custody for the return to Terran Collective Space, at which point you will be provided with further legal counsel regarding your civil case against the Union and return to Terran Collective Society," the Envoy said blankly. I wasn't expecting them to send me a lawyer. They didn't really do anything other than take my bag as evidence, though, Wilfred said, rubbing his eyes. That will be addressed under the civil case. It is time to get you out of here and back to Terran space, the Envoy said, sounding almost congenial for the first time since they had arrived. Wilfred appeared to shrug and stood up. Together, the Envoy and Wilfred were led by the lead supervisor back to the passage. Before the pair left, the Envoy turned back to the lead supervisor. Your cooperation has been noted, as charted by Union leadership. I've transmitted my details to your terminal pad. In the event that any further Terran or Terran Collective citizens are remanded into your custody, you are hereby directed to contact me prior to conducting any and all processing efforts to ensure appropriate legal processing, the Envoy said, with eyes that seemed to be almost hungry for a challenge. The lead supervisor offered no challenge, though. I understand, the lead supervisor managed, and the pair moved swiftly through the passage and out of the lead supervisor's knowing. The lead supervisor could only hope that that was the last time that they would see the Envoy. Compared with the Wilfred, the lead supervisor would have felt more comfortable with the special dragoons guarding the lead supervisor from the Envoy. Wilfred seemed docile by comparison. On board the Terran Collective transport vessel Blind Justice, Wilfred looked over to the Envoy. How'd you all find out about me? He asked. Illegal spice imports are rare enough that when it crossed the legal feeds, we took notice, the Envoy said. Illegal? That was just my basic kit, genuine Terran spices, Wilfred protested. Exactly, the Envoy replied, smiling. End of story. And that, my friends, concludes this video. I hope that you enjoyed.